Have you got some suffering and pain? You got plenty, don't you? Ask that he would reveal his tenderness, his compassion. Ask the Lord to reveal to you what is the meaning of this pain. What are you trying to bring about? Where is the life and the glory and the beauty that you want to bring about in my life and through my life? I would like to invite you to a new heaven and a new earth. In today's second reading from Revelations 21, John says, I saw a new heaven and a new earth. The first heaven and the first earth had disappeared now. And what he says about the new heavens and the new earth, here God lives among men. He will make his home among them. They will be his people, he will be their God. His name is God with them. And he will wipe away all tears from their eyes. There will be no more death, no more mourning, no more sadness. The world of the past has gone. That sounds good, doesn't it? A new heavens and a new earth. God is with us, and all tears and sadness and mourning and death have gone, have passed away. A new creation. Of course, the foundation for this new heavens and new earth is the death and resurrection of Jesus. I want you to imagine for a moment that if we really did believe what the death and resurrection of Jesus tells us, if we really did believe that what God does is he takes the worst human suffering, the worst evil, and he takes that and he turns it into the most beautiful thing, into glory, into life itself, that's what God habitually does. That's what God likes to do with evil and suffering and pain. And that's at the core of the message of the cross. Imagine if we really did believe that. What would our experience of the world be like? Because at this stage, normally what our experience of the world is like is dominated by our attempts to avoid pain, to avoid suffering, to avoid evil, to avoid discomfort and trouble. That really dominates our lives. A lot of our thinking, we're not consciously thinking that, of course, but that's what we're doing. Now, if we really believed that the God that we have is going to take our suffering and our pain and our difficulty and our trouble and turn it into glory, how would that transform our experience of the world? I think we might find ourselves saying, gee, this is a new creation. This is a whole new reality. Everything is utterly changed. I think it'd be kind of like, before a feast, say before Christmas lunch, you let yourself get a bit hungry. I usually try to skip breakfast on Christmas morning so that I get really, hungry and really enjoy the Christmas feast. The hunger experienced in that context that I know I'm about to have a feast is a pleasure. It's very different from if I was lost in the desert and I was hungry. And I kind of thought I may never be able to find food. I might starve to death here. Totally different experience, huh? I think that's something of what our experience of difficulty and suffering and pain would become if we really knew the death and resurrection of Jesus. If we really knew that God is with us in our pain and he's working in that to bring glory and to bring life. I think this is something of what is going on in today's gospel, John chapter 13. Now, the context of today's gospel is that Jesus has just had this interaction with Judas, and Judas has gone out to betray him. And John says, and it was night. It's a deeply symbolic statement. It was dark. And what does Jesus say in this moment when Judas has gone to set up Jesus' death. He says, now has the Son of Man been glorified. And in him, God has been glorified. If God has been glorified in him, God will in turn glorify him in himself and will glorify him very soon. I think Jesus is speaking out of this kind of understanding of the meaning of suffering. He calls his suffering glory. That's his name for it. Now is the Son of Man glorified. Now, this is a completely different experience, isn't it? That when we're faced with this horror, what we see is not, and what we experience is not so much terror and horror, but anticipation. We are now about to see the most glorious and wonderful work of the Father, work of God. That's what we're about to see. It's glory. Of course, a merely theoretical knowledge of the death and resurrection of Jesus is not going to do this for us, is it? I mean, we believe, I think you believe what I've been saying, that this is the death and resurrection of Jesus. But we've got to not just know this with our minds, with our heads, with our words, but we've got to know this with our souls in practice through our own experience of encountering the love of God and the closeness of God, the tenderness of God, the care of God in our suffering, in our pain. We have to know that. We might allow that to happen because we've seen and heard the message of the cross, and that might encourage us to open ourselves to this possibility. But only when we know it in our own experience can we experience the new heavens and the new earth where there is no more tears and no more mourning and no more sadness. That's why in today's first reading, Paul and Barnabas is travelling throughout the Christian communities, and it says they put fresh heart into the disciples, encouraging them to persevere in the faith. We all have to experience many hardships, they said, before we enter the kingdom of God. Why do we have to experience many hardships before we enter the kingdom of God? Because those hardships are our opportunity to open ourselves to this dynamic, this key dynamic of the gospel, to open ourselves to the power of God that brings glory out of pain and out of darkness, that God does his best work in bringing life and the most beautiful thing that we can experience out of our hardship. And so Paul and Barnabas say, we all have to experience many hardships because we've all got to actually learn this in practice. So we have to come to the Lord in our suffering and our pain. Have you got some suffering and pain? You got plenty, don't you? Now, granted, the first thing we do when we come to with the Lord with our suffering and pain is we say, Lord, take it away. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. Of course, that's what we do. Lord, heal this. Lord, take it away. Lord, ease this suffering. But having prayed that prayer, don't just stop there. The next prayer, which is even more important than that prayer, is, Lord, be with me in my suffering. Lord, let me share my pain with you. Do you understand what I'm going through? Allow the Lord to accompany you in that. Ask that he would reveal his tenderness, his compassion. Compassion, which is the heart of Jesus. Compassion, the very meaning of compassion is, I am with you in suffering. Ask the Lord to reveal to you what is the meaning of this pain. What are you trying to bring about? Where is the life and the glory and the beauty that you want to bring about in my life and through my life, through this difficulty? Where is it, Lord? Show it to me. Be with me in this. It's, one of the traditional expressions of that, you may remember, I remember hearing this a lot when I was a kid. We offer up our sufferings. We offer them up for the salvation of our souls, or for the salvation of other people's souls, or for, someone else we're praying for. That's really saying this. It's when we're suffering, we bring it to God and we ask that he will make something beautiful out of it, that he will make something glorious out of it, that he will make something good out of it. My own key experience of this was nearly 15 years ago now, and I'd been a priest for nearly 15 years. I had a period in my life of very intense suffering, actually. It was interior suffering. It wasn't terribly visible on the outside, although my close friends knew I was, and those I lived with knew I was going through a fair amount of pain. I was depressed. I was not quite suicidal, but I certainly had thoughts from time to time. I just actually don't know if I want to keep living. I remember one particular time of reflection where I just had to face up to the fact that I could lose my mind here. I could end up in a mental asylum. I had to face the fear of that. It was, anyway, I don't want to labour the point, but I was really very unhappy and struggling very much. And I had a prayer time in the midst of all of that when I experienced myself going into a darkness in my imagination, but it very much expressed what I was actually feeling in my soul, going into this extraordinary darkness, emptiness. The nature of this darkness is there is nothing good here, nothing good. There is no light, no hope, no benefit, and God is not there, nobody is there, nothing is there. In hindsight afterwards, I would say that was kind of a vision of hell, basically. It was descent into hell. It was like utter abandonment and aloneness and utter pointlessness. And as I found myself going into that space of the worst darkness, somehow, in a way that I cannot explain, God showed himself to me. He revealed to me that he was there with me in that. And that was a transformative experience for me. From that point, my life started to change. And it's not like I was, skipping around like a happy little lamb immediately, but my life has continued to change and be transformed on the basis of that experience ever since then, for the 15 years since then. And it's because I now know that God is with me and I am with him in the darkest possible place, in the most hellish, the most horrible, the most awful place in my soul. He is there with me. And I know that now because I've seen it. And what that means is that there's no more need to be afraid of anything. I am afraid of things because I'm not a transformed saint yet. But there's no more need to be afraid of anything, because that's the worst. That was the worst thing that could happen. And God was there with me in that. What happens on that basis is that instead of suffering and difficulty and pain being a horror that we need to recoil from and get away from and avoid, that we fear, it's something that if we have to go into it, we can go into it with confidence that the Lord is there. It's very much what that second reading is talking about. God with us. God with us. And because God's name is God with you, that means that the world starts to change. Everything becomes new. The things that were terrible can become hopeful. And I very much found myself saying, it's one of the reasons I wanted to proclaim this message, is I've very much found myself saying in prayer over and over again, as I've looked at what this means, I found myself saying, it's like a totally different world. It's like a totally new reality. I'm not saying that because that's what the scriptures say. I'm saying that because I'm fumbling around for a way of expressing what it is that happens when we know that the Lord is with us in our deepest darkness. So I wish, where I kind of wanted to finish this homily was to say to you, go into that deepest darkness in your soul so that you would know the death and resurrection of Jesus, because you will find that God meets you there and shows himself to you there. But I think, to be honest, that's a claim that I have to leave for God. I suspect that that's beyond my authority to promise you what God will do. But what I can promise you, what I do know, without any doubt, and I can say on the authority of Jesus, that when you go into that deepest, darkest place in your soul, he will be there with you. He is there with you. He is there with you, caring for you. He is there with you, accompanying you in your suffering as your closest companion, the most intimate companion of your soul. That he is there with you in that. And that if you can begin to see that and know that, then you will find yourself saying, it's a new heaven, it's a new earth, it's a whole new creation. The old world has passed away. There's no more tears, no more suffering, no more death, no more mourning, because everything has been made new.